Hello and welcome to another video here on Powerdojo. Today we're going to have a look at row level security and how to configure it in PowerBI Desktop. Over here we have a data model ready with a table called configurations which has these 5 columns. We have the entity name with the different confederations including the International Federation which is FIFA. We have the president's name, the email addresses, the revenues. Just to be clear, this is a fictitious data set. These are all made up numbers as well as the email addresses. Now what exactly is row level security and why you should use it? So we're going to make an analogy using the different football confederations so that you can understand how to use row level security in your Power BI reports. So as you know, FIFA is the International Football Federation. We have the different confederations under FIFA. For instance, we have AFC, which is the Asian Confederation. We have UEFA, which is the European Confederation, South American, African, as well as we'll also have CONCACAF, which is the North American and Central American Confederation. So, for instance, if you are a president of, let's say, UEFA, the Confederation of Football in Europe, you are concerned with only figures or information which is pertaining to your confederation. You're not concerned with what happens with AFC. For instance, if you log in to a Power BI report using your UEFA credentials, you are only allowed to see information or details or data which is concerned with UEFA. And similarly, if you are the president of the AFC Confederation, you cannot access the details or information from which belong to the other confederations. So let's move back to Power BI. So in our case, we're going to have a look at several configurations of row level security. In order to do that, click on this icon, which is called Manage Roles, like this. Over here, you click on the plus sign saying New. So let's say, for instance, we need to create a row level security for the European Confederation. All right, so I will click on these 3 dots over here and I'll rename it. Let's call this UEFA. Next, you just click on the tables. We only have one table, which is confederations, and then switch to DAX editor. Now over here, we're going to filter the data as per our needs. So firstly, I'm going to type in the table name followed by the entity name, which is UEFA. Like this, and you click on save. All right, so Power BI has prompted you that okay, this role has been successfully applied. So let's close this. Now in order to verify this, whether the role level security has been applied, you click on the icon which is close to manage roles, which is view as. So what view as does, it's similar to the view as option that you have on, let's say, Facebook. If you want to view as one of your friends, if you want to view your profile as public, as one of your close friends. So this view as options lets you do that. Now we had created the security role called UEFA. Now if I were to click on this and say OK, you will see Power BI has automatically filtered your data model as per the selected security role. So for UEFA, you'll see we only have the line or the row pertaining to UEFA. Now in order to get out of this viewing mode, just click on this stop viewing. So this was one of the configurations of row level security that we just had a look. Now let's have a look at another configuration of row level security in which we'll use email to filter our data. Let's click on manage roles again. This time we'll click on new over here. We'll rename the security role by clicking on the 3 dots over here. And let's put in email. Now, similarly, how we created a filter for UFR, we will create a similar filter for the email address. So over here, we'll type in the table name called configurations and the email column. Now we need to configure this security role as per the user that is connected to the Power BI report. So for that, we'll type in user principal name. What will Power BI do over here? It will check whether the person that which has logged in and viewing the Power BI report, he will check whether his credentials appear in the configurations email column. If they do, Power BI will filter out the data as per the email address used, or it will give no data. It will show no data if it doesn't find any email address corresponding to the user principal name. So let's click on save again. So as you can see, the security role has been successfully applied. Let's close this again. This time we're going to click on view as again. Now the security role that we created was email. We click on that and we click on the other user field as well. Over here, what I can do is, let's say, type in president afc.com. So now as you can see, this email address exists in this column. So Power BI will filter out that row which has the corresponding email. Now what if I were to type an email address that doesn't exist? For instance, let's say, I don't know, assistant @ economyball.com. So you can see, since this email address doesn't exist in our column, and if I click on OK, it will return us no values. So this is the way in which you can set up row level security using email addresses or using the credentials of the person who has logged in or viewing the report. So this was the second manner in which you can configure row level security. Now let's have a look at the third manner in which you can configure row level security. For instance, over here we can see we have the FIFA president, who is, the global governing body of football. Now the FIFA president can have a look at the individual rows of all the configuration as well as its own. You can take this analogy in, for instance, in your company, in your whichever department you're working in. For instance, a manager can have a look at the different departments, or the CEO can have a look at the different departments, how the different departments are doing and what their figures are. So we can take this analogy from football and use it in our example. Now let's go back to Power BI and check how we can configure this. So if you are logged in as the FIFA president, you can have a look at all this data set. And if you are logged in as some other president, for instance of AFC, you can only check data which is pertinent to your configurations. So how to set this up? We will be using this column, which is the entity grade. Over here you can see we had marked 1 for FIFA, and whichever configuration is below FIFA is 0. So we'll be using this condition that, okay, first of all, Power BI needs to look if a value of 1 exists in this column. If it does, return the whole data set, and if it doesn't, return only the line which is pertaining to that email address or the person who has logged in or viewing the report. So how to set this up? We'll go back to manage roles. This time around we'll create another security role. So we click on new. Let's rename it to, let's say, president and grade. We'll switch to DAX editor. Now over here, in order to apply this security role, we will be using the if condition. So what does an if condition do? Will be first of all running a logical test. For instance, if by using the user principal name, we can find out whether the person that has logged in or viewing the report has his name or email address registered in the column in our table that we saw earlier, and does its entity grade is 0 or 1. Do this test. Now the first logical test is, in order to do this logical test, we need to use a function called max. Now what does max do? It will return the largest numerical value or largest string from the particular column that we will identify over here in the DAX function. So we'll be using the entity grade column that we saw earlier, in which it will check if it's the value corresponds to 1 or 0. So we'll type in filter. Now in order to filter, we need the table name followed by filter expression. So the table name is configurations. The filter expression that we want to use is, once again, we'll be typing configurations email address equal to user principal name. We close this. So here the filter function has been provided all the arguments that it needs. So the filter function will return the values which correspond to the email address of the person who has logged in. Now we need to put in a comma, wherein we'll put in the second argument of the max function. The second argument of max function is nothing but where we'll be choosing the value of entity grade. So we click on the column, we close the bracket, and over here we'll be asking if check whether the value is 0 or not. If it's not 0, return all the rows which first of all correspond to the user principal name, as well as where the entity grade is 0. So if you're logged in as a FIFA president, you will be able to see all the information from the remaining configurations. So over here I'll type in configurations one more time, email is equal to user principal name. Now we have provided the second argument of the if function, where if result is true, it will provide us all the rows that correspond with this user principal name. Now we put in comma. Now it's asking us for the third argument. So result is false. Now over here we'll be typing in 1 is equal to 1, which is true. So this means that Power BI has now filtered all the rows as per this condition that we have put in the DAX function. Now we'll close the bracket. If you want to check whether your DAX function has no errors in it, you can click on this icon where you can verify your DAX expression. Since it has given us no alerts, it's safe to say this DAX function works. So we'll click on save. So as you can see, the security role has been successfully applied. So now close this, and I will try using this new security role by clicking on view as and clicking on the box of president and grade and other user. So this is the third security role that we had just created. Now this time around, I will first of all check what does Power BI return if we type in president at fifa.com. All right. So over here you can see it has returned us all the values of the data set in question, which is exactly what we wanted. But what if I were to type in the credentials of, let's say, the president of UEFA, for instance? Ideally, we should be only able to see one row. Let's check. Click on view as. president and grade, other user. This time I'll type in president@ufa.com. I'll click on OK. And this time around, Power BI has returned us only the row that corresponds to the UFA president. So this is exactly what we wanted to do with our security roles. As you can see, we had a look at 3 different configurations in which where first of all we can filter our data set using the entity name, then the email address, or using the user principal name, which is nothing but the person who has logged in or viewing the report using his credentials. And lastly, we saw if we using an if condition in which we had a look at either the complete data set or only the row which corresponds to the email address provided. So let me know in the comments of what you thought about this video. Do not forget to like and subscribe. I'll see you next time.